I can remember vividly a time when I was a kid when somebody showed compassion to me. She changed the way I think about the world. Listen, it's not that people were never kind to me. My grandparents were kind to me. My brothers were kind-ish to me. My friends were. But this was different because it came from someone unexpected. As a young scholar in elementary school, my brothers and I would wake up very early in the morning, do some work in the garden, bathe, put on our colorful uniforms, and run to school. I lived for this routine. Sometimes we stopped on the way to school to pick mangoes and guavas for lunch from the homes along the way, and then we proceeded to school. On our walk, we encountered Harriet and her friends. 2 grades above us, Harriet was taller and stronger than everyone in our little cohort. I don't even remember why we were scared of her. But for good reasons, and good for us, she left us alone anyway. She meant business. This was the routine every day to school and back home. One day at school, I fell seriously ill. I tried to walk home myself, but on the way, I was so tired, I lay on the grass and fell asleep. When I woke up, I was on the back of Harriet. She was carrying me the rest of the way home. I wanted to scream, but I was just too tired. I mean, this was Harriet we are talking about. It turned out to be that I had a very severe case of malaria, and I was rushed to the hospital. Friends, I am okay. That's why I am here. I survived. Harriet and I were never friends, even after that incident. In fact, I saw her less and less after that. My grandmother, as usual, prepared a gratitude fruit basket and took it to Harriet's family. As for me, every time I saw Harriet on the walk to school, we smiled and nodded at each other as we passed by. I am unsure why, if the reason she smiled was because of a deep, profound feeling that she saved my life, that she did something good, or maybe it's because I smiled at her as well. But it is safe to say that Harriet's action that day turned my world upside down. She changed my one-sided view that she was scary and mean, and instead, she became a human being, someone created in the image of God. She became the messenger of hope and compassion in my eyes. Every Yom Kippur afternoon, for our Haftorah, we read the book of Jonah. As we read today, Jonah is a messenger of God called upon by God to go to the city of Nineveh, one of Mesopotamia's largest and wicked cities. Jonah's task is to go meet the people of Nineveh and warn them of the divine wrath that will prevail if they persist in their sinful ways. But rather than heeding God's call, Jonah flees to the opposite direction on a ship towards Tarshish. God sends a massive storm to threaten Jonah's boat. The sailors are terrified. Jonah, fully aware of what is going on, sleeps and leaves the sailors to deal with the storm. Soon the sailors realize that the storm is about Jonah, and so Jonah instructs them to cast him into the sea. Famously, he is swallowed by a great fish. Some say a whale. 3 days later, in the belly of the fish, Jonah, at his lowest point from the depths of despair, pleads for God's mercy. I descended to the low point of the mountains. The gates of earth closed upon me forever. And yet you, Adonai, raised my life up from the pit. We read that God gave Jonah another chance. The fish casts him to the shores. God calls him a second time. Get up, Jonah. Go to the great city of Nineveh, reminding Jonah of his critical mission. Reluctantly, Jonah this time goes to Nineveh. When he arrives and the people of Nineveh hear the prophecy of warning, everyone in the town fasts, the citizens of Nineveh repent, tear their clothes, and sit in ashes. Jonah, in delivering God's warning, saves the people of Nineveh. And a prophet, any of us would have been very pleased with this success. But not Jonah. Jonah was disappointed. He was disappointed and grieved because of what he already knew. God's mercy is everlasting, and God will forgive the people of Nineveh anyway. Why come all this way? We read that Jonah prayed to God saying, "Oh, Eternal One, isn't this just what I said when I was in my own country? This is why I fled to Tarshish. For I know you are compassionate and gracious God, slow to anger, abounding in kindness, and renouncing punishment." Jonah even asked God to take his life. He was so frustrated on how things turned out. Now, God spends a couple of days teaching Jonah about being kind and compassionate to the people of Nineveh, just as God is. My friends, I would have loved to tell you that Jonah's attitude changed. But what we read at the end of the book, no, Jonah was still stuck in his ways, unwilling to let go of this one singular truth that his mission was a waste of time and energy because it did not result in the destruction of the people of Nineveh. He could not see that the warning he brought to Nineveh brought about the change of hearts in these people. He believed his actions did not matter, and the outcomes were already preordained. I invite us a little bit to shift our attention to Jonah's attitude. His hesitation, his lament about the unchanging nature of God. And my friend, on this holiest day of the year, as we confess our wrongs and missed opportunities and ask for forgiveness from ourselves, from others, and from God, why do we read about this ungrateful prophet, Jonah, when we wish to do better? A prophet who ran away from helping the other do better. A prophet who does not want to be involved in other people's lives. I invite you to take a moment to think about Jonah's reaction. Was the task too overwhelming for him? Did he not want to be the prophet of doom? Did he not believe that the people of Nineveh would change? I have some sympathy for Jonah. We all have run away from people, from issues and that seem too painful to confront, and from tasks that seem too big. In their faces, we look too small to effect any change. We may think that other people might misunderstand our involvement, maybe, especially if they have different views and are from different cultures and different traditions. When we think maybe that our voices don't count anyway. I sympathize with Jonah, but I wonder if we read this book of Jonah on Yom Kippur to remind us to fight against becoming too much like Jonah. I fight against my inner Jonah by wanting and really aspiring to live like my schoolmate and village mate Harriet, who decided to help me regardless of our relationship and showed me that people are complex and God's compassion comes to us through other people. I fight against my inner Jonah by striving to emulate God in the book of Jonah, who exhibits forgiveness, recognizes that people are capable of changing, and encourages human beings to be co-creators of compassion as well. We fight against our inner Jonah when we encourage our friends, especially young people, to vote in the upcoming election. It breaks my heart to hear that some people do not want to vote because they believe their vote or their voice will not change the outcome of the election. But do we give in to the voice of Jonah, the inner Jonah, and believe that nothing can change, that our actions have no effect? On the contrary, do we fight against the inner Jonah, vote, and declare who we are and who we are not, what ethics and morals we stand behind? Our truth can grow and evolve as well. Jonah was stuck in his truth, and nothing around him mattered. We learn two truths from Jonah from the opening of the book. Vayhi diver Adonai el Yonah ben Amittai lemor. And the words of Adonai came to Jonah, son of Amittai. First, we learn that he's a messenger. From his name Yonah in Hebrew, it means dove or messenger. So we know he was responsible for other people. Second, he is the son of Amittai, when translated, the son of his truth. So what truth did Jonah hold? Perhaps Jonah believed that the people of Nineveh were morally corrupt beyond repair. He believed that people would not change. As we read from chapter 4 of Jonah, Jonah was very disappointed as soon as the people of Nineveh changed. He said, "Oh Lord, isn't this what I said when I was just in my country, before I fled to Tarshish? For I know you are compassionate and gracious, slow to anger, abounding in kindness, and renouncing punishment." Perhaps Jonah's truth before he was forced to travel to Nineveh was that the Ninevites did not deserve any compassion for who they were, wicked through and through. Secondly, perhaps Jonah believed that whatever his actions were, God would decide what would happen to the people of Nineveh anyway. But by holding only his truth, Jonah failed to appreciate the process of change. He did not open his heart to the idea that it takes hard work, human encouragement, that these are all things that are needed for the world to change. And maybe, perhaps on this day of Yom Kippur, our biggest task is to hold our truth in one hand and be open to other truths as well. We can hold in one hand that we've done wrong and caused destruction and harm in our world, but we can also hold, on the other hand, that we can change, that people can change, we can do better. We have done better. We can work together. We can hold God's everlasting compassion and promise for forgiveness on this day in one hand, and on the other hand, that it's our responsibility to bring that kindness, compassion, and love to each other. Perhaps this is why we read the story on Yom Kippur. It is a powerful reminder that God's ability to exhibit compassion and care when we human beings make sincere efforts to change. Maybe we are also meant to be like God here and be forgiving and willing to forgive in this new year as well. We can allow ourselves a moment to feel small in the face of enormous responsibilities and also hold that it's going to take all of our contributions, small and big, to affect and change our communities. This is the balance of Yom Kippur. God's compassion, Jonah's journey to Nineveh, and the people's recognition of their wrongs and willing and pledging to do better. These are the complete process of Teshuvah. May we remember that the process of change takes all of us. It takes our small and big efforts, and that there is beauty on the process and journey of change that we embark on together, because along the way, we are transformed ourselves. I want to leave you with a teaching from our rabbis in the Talmud. Our rabbis in the Talmud teach that there are no happier days for the Jewish people than the 15th of Av, which is the day of love, and Yom Kippur. Why compare the day of love to Yom Kippur? The rabbis teach us that the day of Yom Kippur is joyful because it's the day on which God pardons and forgives God's people. And I add that what is greater than acknowledging the promise of forgiveness and the dream for a better year ahead for all of us? Gimal Khatima Tova.